what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Accelerator Podcast, giving you practical and tactical tools to bridge the military-civilian gap. I am one of your hosts, Michael Pett, along with Emily King Grandinetta, and today we're going to be discussing the military transition, the truth about what it is and what it is not. Okay, Em,
Hey,
you're on
listen,
a
guys.
mission, right?
I
What are you
am.
on a mission about?
I am on a freaking mission. I'm on a mission to change the way that we as a nation defines military transition and supports those who are making the transition from military to civilian employment. And this, as Mike said last time, the transition can go on. It's not just the last day of service. It's not just your first day at your new job. It is a psychosocial process. It's complicated. It's complex. It affects you and your entire family, your support system. And so we want to help you put your arms around it and own it by understanding it. And, why this is so important to me is because, the ongoing, I've been in this field for over 25 years. I haven't seen any meaningful shift in what veterans are coming out of service, knowing and understanding about the civilian workplace. Okay. I'm just putting it
Yeah,
out there and saying
yep,
that's what it
same.
is.
Echo,
Right.
echo for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So let's stop that, because here's what the negative impact of that is. It's negative impact in terms of unnecessary stress and confusion and isolation that the veteran feels who's transitioning out. Not only that, but in a very measurable way, I believe it's contributing to underemployment. Underemployment is when you get a job that isn't it isn't what you need. It isn't what you want. It doesn't give you a feeling of purpose. It doesn't meet your needs from
Right.
either a monetary standpoint, or it's you're underemployed. You have a job, but it's not kind of where you need to be. And has that concept, underemployment, that dynamic is 3 times more prevalent in veterans than in non-veterans, and it has been linked with veteran suicide, which is
Mhm.
very concerning. And so and it keeps you coming back into the job market, because you churn through jobs again 3 times more frequently in your first year out than non-veterans do in their first year of a job. So let's just make that shit go away.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just a revolving door, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it
All right.
doesn't look
So
good on your resume, and
no,
employers see, oh, this person's been in 3 jobs since they got out of
yeah.
service.
In
That's
6 months, like what's wrong with this person, right?
right.
Yeah. So what is the military transition? How is it thought of?
I mean, I think it's primarily thought of as you got to get your resume in order based on what your last role was in the military, or MOS, which you may not even want to continue doing, but that's the
Mhm,
focus. Is let's get you a resume that looks like a civilian resume, that's
mhm.
understandable and translatable, or understandable by a civilian. And then just get a job, get into the job search process, get on LinkedIn, do all the things you have to do. um you know that's the
Sounds like a
focus. And
sprint.
well,
It
it
sounds
is.
like a sprint, right?
It's a
Yeah.
sprint, and it's also, I think, military transition is also viewed very much as an administrative process of separating from service, which it is.
Right.
Okay. But then, you know there's nobody there to kind of fill the gap of all that really is military transition. It's so much more than the resume and the job. Yes, of course, those are hugely important. But they're tactical work steps within the larger life change that is military transition.
Right.
And so the fact that nobody is talking about the personal impact, the emotions you're going to go through, the moments of uncertainty and isolation
Right.
that you're likely going to feel is just stupid at this point. It's just not right.
Right.
So,
It should be a time of celebration, right? It's a time that, you're stepping away from the uniform. You're going to go. This is where all the positive stressors come out, where you're going to, move back home or move to a new place. And it's supposed to be very exciting, but in turn, it's not. It's like the walls are kind of caving in on you. And our veteran service offices that are out there, right, are not helping, right? Because in fact, I think it murks up the waters, Em. I really do.
mm.
There's over 40,000 veteran service offices out there,
Oh,
right?
you mean
And when you're
organizations?
Organizations, absolutely. And they're focused on job hunting, right? They're focused on resume building. A lot of them are predatory. They're actually charging veterans because they know as they go through the TAP or the transition programs that their branch offers, they know that those resumes are not going to be up to speed, right? They know that the veteran's still going to have a tremendous challenge getting through an interview, right? And speaking in I terms versus we terms, right? So these predatory programs that are out there that are charging fees are in fact complicating the problem. We have our DoD issues, right? And we can get into those all we want, but the VSOs are not helping out there too. So we've got to make sure that as we're talking, right, we're going to tell you some of the ones to look into that will be helpful. Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Did you have
Yeah, I
something?
mean,
Go
I just want to clarify. Listen,
ahead.
there are like 40,000 VSOs, veteran service organizations out there, and they're not all predatory. Many of them are trying to do good, and many of them are doing good, and some of them are trying to do good, but they're somewhat misguided. So it's,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? But how can you, as a newly minted veteran, like see through all of that and hear through all the noise, who's who and what's what. So we are going to talk about that on a later episode, but I
Mhm.
think for now what we want to do is just give a clearer and more realistic explanation of what military transition is and is not. And so it's not a one-time event. In other words, the day that you leave service.
Mhm.
It's not the day you finish your TAP program. It's not your first day at your civilian job. Military transition is a process. It is what I call a psychosocial process.
Yep.
It's something that is going to require different skills of you. For example, there's something that we talk about in the accelerated military transition course called situational self-awareness. You know what situational awareness is in the civilian world and going through the military transition, you are going to have to really own and take on increasing your situational self-awareness. And this is what we really try to teach you to do in the course. And that's not covered anywhere by anybody because people
Right.
are too busy trying to help you figure out how to get that Mick job that, so
Yeah.
listen, keeping a paycheck coming in is a real deal.
Mhm.
I'm not downplaying that. However, and you may need to take a McJob job to as a bridge, right?
Sure.
As you're looking to keep the pay, because the reality is that's what the reality is. However,
Mhm.
you also need to look deeper into not just what can you do, but what do you want to do and what fulfills you? Because once you leave the military service, that feeling of mission and purpose is kind of gone.
Oh
It's
shit. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and
Yeah.
we're probably getting
Yeah.
deeper into things than we're
No.
supposed to this
No.
episode, but I'm just telling you that you're going to have to dig deeper and build a very different muscle than anybody
Yeah.
is telling you about.
Absolutely. You know what? Yeah, we're getting deep, right? So let me just share my experience.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think it'll land well with the audience, and I think they're going to understand this. And you pointed out that the transition never stops, right? And there's different phases of it. When I took the uniform off for the first time, going from active duty to National Guard, so I was still military connected, right? But it wasn't doing it in a 365 capacity anymore. Jumped into Accenture. Was extremely excited about it and to be honest with you, I hadn't asked all of the right questions, right? What was my new uniform going to look like, right? Because day one, I showed up in a suit and I was knotted up, suited and booted. And unfortunately, I ran into a person that day and they did not want me to wear that. And that was the first bruising of the ego, right? It was because I thought I was squared away, but it turns out I was out of uniform. That really kind of cut me, right? But then it was understanding the languages, the systems, the platforms, all of the different processes. All of that stuff began to really weigh on me. And I began to really question whether or not I made the right decision. And there was several other transition experiences that took place throughout my career in corporate America that I think is going to hit home or be very relevant to everybody. So that's one example of stepping away for the first time, being excited about work just to kind of get a little crapped on by some of your coworkers because you're out of uniform, right? But there's
Mm.
so many different experiences that we'll be able to speak to.
And a
Okay.
lot, and what I love so much about what you shared is it's a very little, it's a moment in time
Yeah.
that really hit you hard.
Yeah.
Probably harder than the person who made the comment thought it would, right?
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Because if they didn't make the transition out of military service, they don't know how nerve-wracking that experience can be, your first civilian
Yeah.
job. But also because it's something that is so a lot of the things that transitioning veterans go through are felt by many and experienced by many, but nobody talks about that. And so many people end up thinking they're alone, which is what I learned in the process of writing the book At Ease, uh, is that a lot of people reading it had a very emotional reaction because they were like, I thought it was me. I thought I was the only one. And it's like, no, you are not alone. So
Oh, absolutely.
let's talk about it,
Yeah.
and let's talk about the truth about it.
Yeah.
And so thanks for sharing those examples. I've got millions of anecdotes and examples from my experience working with thousands of veterans over the years, and we'll share those as we go along. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. And just when ADs came out, I spoke about this in our last podcast. I reached out to you first, right? When I was leaving Uber and going through the transition process again, right? Because like I said, folks, you're going to hear it over and over again. The transition process never ever stops. Okay. But we'll unpack that at a later date because it's actually going to tie really, really well into one of our themes. Okay. So
awesome.
and then yes, to your point, we've helped thousands of veterans over the last decade plus, right? And we'll be tying in those examples throughout our shows,
Yes.
right? All
Yes.
right.
Awesome.
So let's wrap up, right? Because we've got a kick-ass episode number 3 that's coming, right? Which is we're gonna do some deep dives. But what should folks tune in for?
Well, they're tuning into my doggy right now, little Miss Leia. Yeah, I mean, tune in, absolutely read the newsletter on LinkedIn, the
Mhm,
Veteran Success Roadmap. Blueprint. Sorry, I always say that
mhm,
wrong.
mhm.
That is an amazing resource for everybody, whether you're transitioning, whether you're hiring veterans. It's going to give you a lot of insight that we can't get into depth in here. And certainly check out military.grandinetta.com for other no-cost resources and some resources that you are going to have to, pay for if you want. If you want, if you want quality, we all have to pay for quality. So,
Absolutely.
um, you know,
Absolutely.
anyway, tell your friends, share the podcast, and remember, it is possible to own your military transition so it doesn't own you the way it has
Absolutely.
so many people. All right, let us help you. Be well,
There you go.
friends.
All right. See you all next time. Thank you.